The firing gun has been fired for a June referendum on Britain's membership of the EU, and business leaders are mixed on their views. Well, a letter published in the Times this week has attracted the signatures of 36 FTSE 100 companies campaigning to stay in the EU. Now, they include companies like BT, Royal Dutch Shell, Asda, Marks and Spencer's, and owners of London's two biggest airports as well. Well, we've got Robert Olds just here from the Bruges Group, the director. Hello. So as I was just saying there, big companies. I also want to say 200 business leaders representing 1.2 million employees. They want to stay in the European Union. What do you say to that?
Well, there's many businesses that actually refuse to sign the letter, and they've made a mistake sort of getting involved in politics. Really, this is for the British people to decide. It's how to vote in a referendum, and businesses would be better off staying neutral. Now, many businesses, when they talk about the EU and they say they support the EU, what they're actually referring to is the single market, and they've unfortunately confused the two things. Really, we can be outside of the European Union but remain part of the single market and definitely still have access to it. So businesses shouldn't worry if they have such a totemic importance attached to the single market, then they should rest assured that Britain can leave the EU, but we would still have access. They don't have to worry, but we do not have to have political union and the political control of Brussels. Many economists actually think that's actually damaging the UK economy as well as other economies in the European Union. But really, we can end the political control but still keep economic links. So they shouldn't be worried, really.
Let's talk about the economics, though, because just a few telltale signs. We've already had the sterling plummeting in response to this. We've got talk of Britain's credit rating being reduced. We've had big banks saying that they would move ashore. That's a little bit worrying in terms of the British economy.
HSBC have said they're going to be staying in Britain. Toyota will be staying in Britain for generations to come. They will not be leaving. Of course, many of these people actually argue that Britain should join the euro. So really, they're not often the best judges of what's in the economic interests of the UK. Really, the point is that we don't have to be part of the EU to have good trade links, and that's what we just need to remember. So if we can just look at the opportunities of leaving the European Union, how we can have better global links, would be far more beneficial to industry, not just in Britain, but also around the world, because companies want to go global. Britain, it was always a global trading nation, and this sort of myopic obsession with the European Union is actually holding us back. If we were be able to make our own trade agreements, then we could have trade agreements that include trade in services, which is one of the key things that Britain does really well at the moment. But the European Union, when it has trade agreements with third-party countries, they do not usually have free trade in services. That's something Britain should negotiate for ourselves, and we could do a lot better. So there are some real opportunities, and Britain was always a buccaneering nation going out there looking for opportunities around the globe. We lost our confidence a bit in the 1960s and the 1970s, but when we're the fifth largest economy, soon to be the fourth, even within a couple of years or a couple of decades, will overtake Germany as on current predictions. We shouldn't be scared about leaving at all.
What about the financial centre, though, of London? Because there is a fear that that would lose its status in the world. It does account for 12% of our GDP. It is a concern, Robert, no doubt.
Well, one of the biggest threats to the financial centre would be the European Union and the financial transaction tax, which Britain has been opposed to, yet the European Union has been pushing. There's the EU regulators that have the power to shut down a British or any other European Union financial institution.
The UK government is aggressive towards that regulation that comes from Brussels, though, isn't it?
Well, that's the thing. The regulation of financial services doesn't actually come from Brussels. You have the regulators, you have these agencies, these UN agencies that can shut down a British financial institution, a British bank, if they so wish. But the regulations of how the industry is operated doesn't actually come from the European Union. Now, of course, a lot of people said the City of London would be finished if we didn't join the euro. Well, the City of London most trades in euros are in the City of London, most trades in dollars are in the City of London, most trades in the yuan are in the City of London. Yet, of course, we're not in China, we're not in a political union with China. Basically, Britain has these global links. We don't need to be stuck inside the European Union. And whilst we're in the EU, Britain cannot make its own trade agreements. We can't make our own trade agreements that includes the free access of services. So really, we're missing out. There's a massive opportunity cost by Britain not being able to make its own trade agreements, because the EU doesn't want to include services in third-party trade agreements, not usually. And so whilst we're stuck inside the EU, the City of London is really missing out. And when it comes to regulation, actually most regulations that affect financial services come from the Financial Stability Board, the G20, the OECD, even the WTO has a role. There's a whole host of global bodies out there which affect how the business is operated. And the European Union just adopts these regulations and then applies them to the member states. But Britain's actually a leader in many of these regulations, and a House of Lords report several months ago found that if Britain was outside of the European Union, we would have exactly the same regulatory environment, because these regulations that people say are affecting the city actually have been influenced by the UK. Mark Carney, the Bank of England, is the chairman of the Financial Stability Board. He's actually one of the leading people representing the UK setting these regulations. So whether we were in or out, the City of London would have the same trading environment, but there'd be one important difference. It would be free of EU agencies that can shut them down at a whim. It'd be free of the EU trying to impose a common level of corporation tax, when of course we want lower corporation tax in Britain. It would be free of any threat to the financial transaction tax, and we would be able to make our own agreements, and we would open up new markets for financial services around the world. And the rest of the world is growing, and it's the European Union that's in decline. So Britain would be doing very well indeed.
All right, Robert, we'll leave it there. The director of the Bruges Group, Robert Oles, thank you very much. And here on News Markets, we will be covering both sides of the argument for the next 4 months or so. So thank you very much indeed for watching. We appreciate it.